Today, we're talking about the ultimate NFT and how, in the first place, we are to understand what the ultimate NFT should even be. That's right, we are here in the midst of JPEG mania. There has never been, probably in the history of the world, the kind of value appreciation and accrual to any asset class that is happening right now to JPEGs. That's right, we are living in crazy times. And today we are going to be peeling back the layers and showing you what's going on every single step of the way. If you guys are excited for what I believe will be one of the most, if not the most valuable pieces of content that we've ever done here on the show, certainly one of the most valuable segments we've ever done for NFTs, then go ahead, destroy that like button. Let's go ahead and show this content to more viewers because this one is going to be packed with value. So the best thing you can do to help me out for this daily content, for helping you guys get into NFTs months ago when values were literally 1/100th, 1/1000th of what they are today, then all you have to do is smash that like button. Remember, each and every comment on the video is entered to win your own hardware wallet. And as always, there are scammers in the comments, so be careful. If you guys want more content like this, make sure you subscribe. But without any further ado, let's dive into the content because today we have so much to cover. So first and foremost, I wanted to talk about the macro. The macro is so important right now. And right now we have the potential for a fake out above resistance here. Again, I've been calling for some turbulence in these 40s. Again, I was looking for much lower entries to just understand that some kind of move downward and then closing above the $40,000 level would be definitely bullish still. And that's because the on-chain metrics here in crypto land are super positive, super exciting. But remember, even when the market was crashing and dying, we still had the most insane up-only market for JPEGs and NFTs that we've ever seen. So this doesn't quite apply to the NFT market. In fact, there's a high likelihood, or there's a non-zero chance, I should say, that NFTs might preserve some value while the rest of crypto crashes. But it's important to realize that we are in a sort of do or don't mode right now, a do or don't moment for the entire crypto market, which is extremely important to know. There is always risk with the reward. There's never one-sided market. And whenever it gets too one-sided, you should be very worried. Now, that said, according to Will Clemente, who's an amazing on-chain analyst, he's been on the show. If you guys don't follow him, what are you doing? You should definitely be following Will. He says almost 30,000 BTC moved on to exchanges in the last week, not a trend we want to see continue, meaning that we are going to see some selling pressure here. Now, he says a lot of people were mad at me for posting this and the other tweet suggesting caution yesterday, but when I post something bullish, no one questions it. Price can't go up in a straight line. I just want everyone to be prepared as possible. This is important to prepare mentally because you never want to be overexposed and the markets can change fast. Now, that said, we are existing in a new paradigm. So I just wanted to give this brief macro update. 1,000 of you, 1,100 in the chat. Guys, smash that like button because we have so much to cover and we're about to dive into it right now. I just want to see a few more likes here because we have this insane announcement. Visa just bought a CryptoPunk. Visa owns 0 Bitcoin. They own 0 Ethereum. But they might have had to buy some Ethereum to buy the CryptoPunk, but let's not talk about that. The point is, they own 0 Bitcoin, they own 0 Ethereum. But here, they're admitting that they own a CryptoPunk. Now, you could say this was cheap, easy, earned marketing, a marketing stunt rather. That could very well be the case. It's definitely smart marketing to have a company like Visa buy a CryptoPunk. You know what the headlines are going to do after that. So the earned media there is probably way more than the $150K that they spent. Now, that said, this is a huge sign of the times. And the fact is that we have never really seen an asset class like this. And the money that's moved in has primarily been idealist. These people who just came in passionate about the space, like someone we're going to be talking to later today. Someone named Mitchell Chan, who is one of the artists that has been one of the most foremost and influential artists here in the crypto space, and someone you probably don't know about. But people like Mitchell and others like him have formed the bedrock of this industry. They are the ones that have created the seed here. But now we're seeing an explosion into entirely new highs, entirely new markets, entirely new holders, people like publicly traded companies like Visa possessing these assets, and it's putting us into a new paradigm. But Of course, we're seeing things like Zero Hedge covering pet rocks, making $1 million sales. That's right. This pet rock, this clip art JPEG has just been sold for $1 million. And I know what the inclination here is. The knee-jerk reaction is to say this is a bubble and this must crash. But the harder thing to do is to peel back the layers and try to understand where this might be headed. Now, if we are headed to a place where NFTs are an incredible store of value and these on-chain artifacts end up holding and growing in value over time, I do believe that that will be the case. The question is which ones and why. So to understand which NFTs we should be looking at and which ones are being wildly overpriced or are just in bubble territory and others that very well might hold and grow over time, not just for the next few days or months, but for the next few years and decades, well, we need to understand what makes an NFT valuable. And we need to understand, especially at the high end of the NFT spectrum, why people might be seeing these as stores of value or very important historic artifacts. Now, what took me a while, as you well know, because I took a very long time to fully get subscribed to meme coins, took me a while to get around to understand that this is a part of the internet economy, whether I like it or not. The reality is that the NFT meme economy is something that should not be overlooked, and that there will be different sides of the high quality, high art spectrum. And sometimes the things of most value are the ones that are just dumb and relatable. And in the case of NFTs, I believe that we will see two sides of the spectrum emerge, but more on this in just a second. Because this is the feeling that I have right now, and this is the feeling that most people have, which is I've never felt so underexposed and overexposed at the same time. I mean, I literally have 7-figure exposure to JPEGs, and I don't know whether I'm going to go down in the book as the dumbest person on the planet or the smartest person on the planet. Time will tell. It's impossible to know right now because we're in the midst of the mania. So when you're inside the storm and you can't see it from the outside, you need to use as many logical theories. Like, remember what I said about thesis-based investing? You need a thesis here. If you don't have a thesis and you're just chasing next shiny object after next shiny object, then you're most likely going to end up on the wrong side of a very expensive trade. But if you have a thesis, you at least prepare for the eventual realities of a normalization in this market. Now, with that said, there's 1,500 of you in the chat. If you guys can smash that like button, I'd really appreciate it because we're about to go into the major alpha section before we bring up Mitchell to explain what is potentially one of the more influential art projects that has ever happened on the blockchain. And it's a historic project. So I wanted to go into this because actually, I'm going to go into this after I explain this. So this is an article by Arthur Hayes. Now, Arthur Hayes created BitMEX, and obviously we all know he got into some trouble legally, but with all due respect to Arthur, regardless of what comes out of this legal situation he's in with the SEC, the reality is that Arthur is a total thought leader in the space. He's been one of the most successful crypto entrepreneurs in history, and he has a very, very interesting piece that he published, 4 days ago now. Now, this is called Rock, Paper, Scissors, Go. The whole point of this article, which we're about to go through, is to understand what these goods, what these assets very well might end up being categorized as and how people will come to ascribe value to them. Now, I find it to be a very, very interesting article for a few reasons. He goes through the history of art, which we'll talk about here. Art is an expression of human civilization's energy abundance. When viewed in net energy terms, it's completely worthless, but when viewed in the purest expression of humanity beyond our basic functions of consuming calories, reproducing, and perishing, it is priceless. The advent of super intelligent networked thinking machines will herald an era where the vast majority of humans' labor is economically worthless. This is a very interesting point because we're at a turning point in history, which is not, something in the fictional future, hundreds of years in the future or decades in the future. But we're probably looking at 5 to 10 years from now, a situation where we will have AIs and robotics that wildly outstrip the cognitive capacities that we have as humans. The ability to deliver work as humans is probably going to be rapidly outpaced over the next few decades by robotics and AI. That's just the reality. Machines are smart, and they'll be able to do a lot of things that we cannot. But one of the things that we will have going forward is our innate human creativity and ability to create new paradigms. Creativity, our creative work, is going to be one of the most important industries of the future. Because for the most part, a lot of the mundane, rote, day-to-day laborers will be replaced by those who are smarter and more capable than us. That's at least the world that I think is going to take place. And this leads us to the metaverse, which is essentially the amalgamation of all creative work together, whether it's digital engineering, art, animation, music, it's all going to come together in what we're calling the metaverse. And so this is why creativity and what we view as priceless treasures of our own creative work, the type of work that will persevere through this era, is so interesting and important. That's kind of a philosophical aside. If you guys are liking this so far, if you're thinking this is a little bit of a different approach to NFTs than just looks rare, must pump, then please smash that like button because we're going deep today. So first of all, the first thing that he starts with is you are worthless. And this comes to the idea of our work will be outstripped and will be made worthless because no matter how smart or fast or strong you are, you will be outshined by whatever's going on at Boston Dynamics or whatever's coming out of the next AI summit over there at Tesla. I can imagine that they're going to be smarter and better than me. However, this is also echoed by Mark Zuckerberg, who has just declared that Facebook is going to become essentially a metaverse company. Regardless of your politics, Western or Eastern, of course, China is fashioning a mobile-first society, and we all know about that. However, what we see is that across the board, regardless of politics, religion, or cultural affiliation, the metaverse is the clear future, the clear destination for our lives online. More importantly, gaming is one of the biggest trends, and I've been saying this for years, so it's so nice to hear it come out of other people's mouths, but gaming is one of the most explosive trends in human history. It continues to grow geometrically year over year, and it is going to fundamentally consume and absorb, in my opinion, almost every other internet industry. It'll all be inside the metaverse, which in my opinion is a subsection of gaming, or will become an umbrella for gaming, whatever you want to see it as. Arthur says he's willing to bet that as gamers spend more time in their virtual worlds, affinity to a nation state or a religion wanes in favor of in-game communities. Now, I believe this because the gaming community is one of the strongest in the world. They create a lot of the internet memes. They are the source. They are, in my opinion, the seed of online culture right now. It's only growing. Things like FaZe Clan, things like these esports teams and gaming content creators like Mr. Beast started out as a gaming content creator. These are really important observations to understand where the most value culturally is sitting. Gaming is not just shoot 'em ups. He views this as some social activity inside a virtual world. The construct will morph into any activity inside a virtual world. I agree. But this is the part that you guys signed up for. This is what you're here for, which is the question is how to flex. Because this is a big part of what's going on with on-chain artifacts. You don't want to buy these just to hold them. A lot of this is socially driven. And when you think about what we do as humans, almost everything we do is socially driven. Social and the actual feedback we get from the external world drives so much of our cognitive processes and physical actions, it boggles the mind, which is why NFTs and their ability to validate us socially is going to be one of the biggest drivers of their value. So understanding the psychology behind ownership, the psychology behind why we do anything is important to understand why NFTs may or may not have value. So he starts by talking about a nightclub economy and how it's this kind of weird mating ritual where we overpay for drinks and we get all dressed up to sit in a dark room and listen to loud music. But the point is that we subscribe to this paradigm where we all go do this, we overspend, we flex, we flash, we wear our Sunday's best, and we want to show off and be looked at as a superior human. And this is part of the ritual that leads us to this online mating ritual, this online dance that we're doing. And as we progress here, I don't need to go into the gaming statistics, but we need to understand what a flex good is, because this is at the key of understanding what's going on with rocks, understanding what's going on with NFTs in general, with Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks. I consider these to be very much so memberships, but also flex goods. People want to show off their CryptoPunks, and that's why they make them their profile picture, their avatar. So in order to have a flex good, and the reason why it is such a flex is because the good must be intrinsically worthless. Look, it's pixel art. We're trading $250,000 pixels. And that's what makes this so unbelievably crazy, and also what makes it such an exclusive club. When in doubt, check whether said item is lyrically mentioned by a pop star. If true, then it's probably a flex good and intrinsically bankrupt. Possession of the good should confer in membership to an exclusive community, and the good should be limited of quantity, in other words, scarce. So essentially, you want something worthless, hopefully mentioned by a pop star, but not necessarily required. Possession of the good should confer membership, and the good should be limited. Those are the things that we're saying are the key characteristics here of a flex good. Now, as we go down here, what we see is, I think the most important thing is he compares this to Ether Rocks. Now, if you guys don't know what Ether Rocks is, it's essentially clip art JPEGs from 2017 that there was 100 of these, and it is literally just a pet rock. I don't even think the art was original. I think they used clip art. But the reality is this is probably the most worthless thing on the planet. And if you agree that it's worthless, please smash that like button, because Ether Rocks to me are the perfect left side of the bell curve. They are the dumbest possible store of value. They are the dumbest thing ever. And because they were so early and historic in 2017, their dumbness is leading to them being considered this ultimate flex. Because who the heck is going to pay $1 million for that? And if you do, what does it say about that person? Important observations. But the point is here that because it's so dumb, because it's something that you can show off to everyone around the world, how many people are going to see you drive your Lambo on a given day? How many people are going to see you wear that expensive piece of jewelry as you go to the mall? Well, we know on the internet, you can show these things off to millions of people at once. And so these goods, for fulfilling our desire to flex and show off and actually have socially meaningful validations of who we are, is actually made exponentially more powerful online. So that's why these whole concepts of flex goods are so, so important. And so then it doesn't really surprise you. It doesn't really surprise you to see what we're seeing right now, which is we're seeing the evolution of these goods and the pricing models desperately trying to catch up with what's going on now that we've decided to acknowledge that NFT JPEGs are these types of goods. But unlike rocks, there is an entirely right side of, in my opinion, the IQ spectrum. So you have a duality here with rocks, where it is at one point, at the very same time, the dumbest and most worthless and most valueless thing of all time, and at the same exact time, the most exclusive, most valuable, hardest to attain thing in the world. $1 million piece of JPEG art, which is intrinsically worthless, which means that you're dumb for buying it. But at the same time, buying it confers you membership into clubs with Arthur Hayes and Justin Sun and many other powerful people around the world. But what about something that is not just a useful thing for flexing, not just inherently intrinsically valueless, but also conceptually meaningful? Now we get something on a different side of the IQ spectrum, what I consider the high IQ, 500 IQ play here in NFTs, which is what is the beauty that will persevere, like Leonardo da Vinci and these other famous pieces, the Van Goghs. What are the things that actually have substance in the creativity? And then that is the reason why they're special, not because they're so absurd and so valueless, because that's what the meme economy, you can think of these as memes. Whereas on the right side of the spectrum, you actually have creative value there. You have artistic brilliance. There is something intangibly, intrinsically valuable there, yet at the same time, it still suits the bill for being an NFT that, inherently a JPEG is valueless. So let's talk a little bit about this, because Fidenzas, which I consider, we did a show the other day with a gentleman named Han. It was incredible. We started talking about Fidenzas. At that time, the floor for Fidenzas was about 35 Ethereum. Now the floor for Fidenzas, last time I checked, actually, let me check right now, is 164 Ethereum. So if someone were to have bought it, they would be up, was that about 5x in just as many days. So Fidenzas now just had their first 1,000 ETH sale, $3.5 million, astronomical. We're also seeing ringers go crazy. All the art blocks collections are going nuts. And that's because art blocks, in my opinion, represents a different type of creative pursuit, where you could argue that these on-chain artifacts possess something unique, something that is historic. This is art that can only be created in this way electronically, and it also is completely composed or comprised within the code on the block. It's very interesting, and in many ways, it's more historic, I think, than even some one-of-one art pieces, which were created digitally. They're not necessarily crypto art, whereas this is cryptographically protected art inside of code, and it's beautiful. So there's something really interesting here where if I'm going to start placing my bets, I've started to become quite interested and obsessed with these art blocks. Now, that said, the numbers don't lie. It's up only for art blocks, and that's what makes it quite a bubble. What these things should be priced at, we will see over time. But I do believe that if there's anything that would cross the chasm here and be up in a museum, it's unlikely that we would see the rocks presented in a museum. Now, that said, it's undeniable to me that that will be a market, and there will be a market for this ridiculous, dumb flex good, just like there's a market for Gucci sneakers that look ridiculous, that nobody really thinks they look good, but they attract attention. Now, when we talk about Fidenzas, I consider this to be some form of high art. But there's another form of high art that I think is really important. And I believe that experiments that actually innovate and push for new types of art forms on the blockchain, especially ones that happen historically before this 2021 craze, will start to fall into the category of historic. So with that in mind, I have an artist right here to speak with you, Mitchell Chan, and he is going to explain to you what he has done, because I believe he has created a piece of art all the way back in 2017 with incredible foresight. I'm not going to butcher this. I'm going to bring him on so he can explain it, because I think you just need to hear it straight from this artist. But this is an experiment, for lack of a better term, that I believe is one you should be considering, because I think it has a chance to go down as an important historic experiment on chain. And understanding the frameworks that were outlined here by Arthur Hayes, the frameworks that are explained here about flex goods, historical value, what it means in the larger context of history, understanding what's going on here with Fidenzas, understanding why all these things have value. I think it's a really interesting time to turn our attention now to what Mitchell has done. I'm going to bring him up to explain his art piece, which is called Digital Zones of the Immaterial. Mitchell.
Hi.
Hi, Mitchell. Thank you so much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure. Could you please introduce yourself to the audience? And then could we talk about what you have done? Because I think it's one of the more interesting things that I've heard of.
Thank you so much. My name is Mitchell F. Chan. I'm an artist based in Toronto. And in 2017, in the midst of making a variety of different works that were about systems and ideas that were invisible or intangible, I created an artwork called Digital Zones of Immaterial Pictorial Sensibility. It was deployed on August 29th, 2017, and the first token was minted the day after that at an exhibition and lecture at Interaccess Media Arts Center in Toronto. And it was a project that was about really what blockchain means and what it says about our relationship to ideas of value. And it was a project that was about what it would mean if, this was August 2017, what it would mean if we actually ever were going to sell tokenized artwork on that blockchain. It was a pretty crazy idea. I didn't really expect it to have much significance in the near future.
Well, and I think that's partly a characteristic of the projects that have had the most value. If you look at CryptoPunks, they were given out. It was an experiment. If you look at the Ether Rocks thing, they were not heavily marketed. Nobody really anticipated this. And I think the same is true of what you've done. But before we get ahead of ourselves, what is this art piece? What is it? And how can I explain it to the audience?
Sure. So the best way to explain it is it's sort of a thesis about what fundamentally underpins any tokenized artwork, but sort of in the tradition of artists who are trying to understand a thing that is happening right now or that they see coming in the very near future on the horizon. You know, people who are sort of in this art world, you know, what we do is we look back to art history and we try to see if there are precedents. We try to see if there were other minds in history who have explored similar ideas and given it expression. And so that's what I did. And so at the time when I started this project, I didn't know what form it was going to take. I just knew that there was this thing called Ethereum and that it was programmable money. And if this money is programmable, that means that you can create something out of it. It means that you can control it and you can make an artwork out of it. I didn't know what it was going to be. But I did some research and I discovered that there was a 60-year-old artwork that to me perfectly explained what tokenized artwork would be all about. It was an artwork by a French artist named Yves Klein. And in 1958, he sold spaces of empty air. and he called them zones of immaterial pictorial sensibility. And at the time, he was a very famous artist. And it's important to note that this seems really scammy. This seems really like sort of on it does, right? It seems like it's really on the low end of that IQ bell curve that you're talking about. But this is where something sort of the magic of an artist collector relationship, or really an artist society relationship, comes in, which is that every time an artist comes in and tries to sell you something or even exhibit something that looks sort of low effort like this, they're leveraging their entire history as an artist, their reputation, and their credibility. And if they've accrued enough of it, then they can credibly assert that, no, actually, this is a thing. Klein was not just a famous artist at the time, he was a brilliant artist at the time. He was best known for patenting a shade of blue, and he was a very spiritual person. He's actually, I believe he coached like the Spanish judo team. He had spent his entire career making paintings out of this color blue, and he said that now it was so much a part of him that the best thing he could do was to use no paint at all, but to try to just confer through a sheer force of will the idea, the sensation of it, right? And so that is ostensibly what people were experiencing when they walked into this empty gallery, and many people did. Apparently, thousands of people lined up for this. And the idea is that by taking away as many intermediaries, right, you get closer to the actual metaphysical thing. Right? Take away the intermediary of paint. That's just a way of representing something. All right. And definitely make sure that it's not a painting of like a blue flower. That's just a picture of a flower. It's not a real flower. If what you're trying to communicate is a feeling, do it directly. So he creates these zones of immaterial pictorial sensibility.
And this is his blue, by the way, where he created this shade of blue.
That is International Klein Blue.
International Klein Blue. So this was part of what he was, and for other people who might be saying, big whoop, this is part of the history of art. And just so everybody knows, I'm learning with you, right? This is not something that I know about. This is something that I'm learning about with you guys. And, people like Mitchell and other folks have helped me get educated. Again, I'm not trying to imply that I know what the valuations are. In fact, nobody is. Mitchell's certainly not. But the point is that in the history of art, what Yves Klein did holds meaning, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's considered one of the most important artists of the 20th century, right? Precisely because he's interested in, if you distill art down, what is the bare minimum that it can be and still be meaningful to someone, right? And how can you communicate this? But he's also not naive. And he addresses something that we're talking about here today, that a lot of people have talked, like that a lot of people are talking about in this new NFT world, which is, what is the relationship between price, ownership, and your experience of something, right? You talked about these sides of, you talked about these things that have no utility value, but that are only a flex. And then you talked about these things that are beautiful. And somewhere in between, there's this spectrum of how the price that you pay for something and the fact that you own it, or the fact that you don't own it, but covet it, it does impact how you perceive it, right? And for a long time in art circles, it's vulgar to suggest that. It's vulgar to suggest that the price of something would make it better or worse art. But come on, that is disingenuous, right? These things matter, whether we like it or not. Right? So he would do things like, he had a series of all blue paintings that were all materially more or less identical, but he would put different prices on them. And collectors could just choose whichever one that they wanted, right? And understanding that it's almost like an experiment where the only variable is price, and we're testing. Does this affect people's relationship to it? Anyway, so he is.
It kind of reminds me of the Banksy experiment, where he dressed up like a janitor at his own exhibit or whatever. I think it was Banksy, and nobody said hi to him.
Yeah.
Or I forgot, maybe, I don't know if it was Banksy, might have been someone else, but it's like the perception and reality are so crazily intertwined. And that's essentially what we're discussing here, right? Is perception.
Mm-hmm. And so he says, and so these invisible artworks, all right, understanding that they do have some kind of connection to money, understanding that the true meaning of an artwork is something that you can never hold, right? I mean, that feeling. So he decides to contrast that. He'll sell these only for pure gold. And I mean, I don't think anybody here is going to roll their eyes at this because we're buying JPEGs for pure ETH, right?
Yeah.
But people did buy them for pure gold. And what they got in exchange, remember, the artwork was invisible, but they did get a receipt, a paper receipt, really nice one that he signed. Said they have. So what does that sound like to you? That sounds like an NFT, right? I mean, that is a token. And then he said that to further underscore the relationship between like really owning something and being able to flex it, to truly underscore the difference between having a deep relationship to something and being able to display it, that if you wanted to, you could meet him at the River Seine and you could burn that paper receipt, and he would throw half of his gold into the river, and through that ritual there would be something spiritual that was conferred to you. So anyway, that was the project. Okay, that was the project 60 years ago. Now I'm looking at this. It's 2017. All right, the term NFT doesn't exist at this time, obviously, right? But I'm thinking, holy smokes, like this is the template for what, like at its core, digital artwork would really mean, right? It's sort of like ultimately all that we can put on the blockchain is a record of ownership, right? And there's a sense of trust that exists between the artist and the collector. There's a level of immateriality that is there. The thing that we're selling can never ever be held. And this is beautiful. I mean, I think that this analogy, it opens up, this whole thing for critique. And if you want to be skeptical about it, you can. And I think that's totally fine. And good art should open itself up to critique. But I also think that there's something very beautiful there about the idea that we are selling and transacting something that can be, if it's done in good faith and with a meaningful relationship between artist and collector and audience, extremely meaningful, right? And that really does cut out that sort of the medium.
So first of all, thank you for explaining that, because to be honest, I read through this a bunch of times and I didn't fully get it. I'm happy to admit that. However, I understood that there was something I wasn't understanding. And that's why I put some of my gold, what I think of as more important than gold, my Ethereum, and I bought a series 1 of what you've done here, which is a 2017 NFT, which, I mean, there's an argument that all NFTs from 2017 have some meaning, some value, as they were just literally done as experiments that now have created the sort of seeds for a really important industry. So you could just say, hey, look, the fact that people were even dabbling in this is interesting. However, you have now created essentially an ode to Yves Klein, right? Which is you tried to replicate the experiment of here's a non-existent piece of art, which is really just a receipt for something, whatever, something that didn't exist, but you have a receipt. And if you want, you could even burn that receipt. So you created a smart contract, right? Where I can, as an owner of this NFT here, as an owner of this, as an owner of this NFT, I can actually burn it and it will take half of the Ethereum in the smart contract, your original smart contract, and it will send it to a null address. So it will like essentially be the equivalent of when Yves Klein dumped the gold into the river, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. It'll take half of the price that was paid for it initially, and it sends it to, it sends it to a contract that is verifiably, that is verifiably a black hole. Yeah.
So essentially, you've replicated this as in essentially a high art experiment, arguably one of the first, I'm not going to say the first because that's up to interpretation, but one of the first high art pieces on the blockchain effectively. And that's why we're talking today, is because honestly, I don't know how to value this stuff. I don't think anybody does. That's why we're seeing this crazy stuff we're seeing now. But if you think about, essentially what types of buckets will be things that people will want to claim they own, and understanding that a pet rock of a JPEG that is clip art is at this point kind of undeniably one of those. You have crypto punks, these signals that you are part of a movement, that you understand certain things about this movement and that you want to be a part of the club. Well, there's only like 50 of these that you created, right? I mean, how many pieces are there?
There are 101.
101.
101, one of which was burned the day after the original exhibition. I think that only like some of them that were purchased in 2017, I don't know the status of. I don't know if they're going to wake up. On OpenSea, you can only see maybe like 55 of them because only 55 were wrapped. I did create a wrapper to celebrate the an anniversary milestone of the contract back in April, so that they could be visible on, well, listed on OpenSea, so that their wrapper could be visible. The artwork itself can never be visible. And yeah, I mean, to your point about what they signify. So what the whole spiel that I just went through, that is, believe it or not, as verbose as I may seem, that was the short explanation, right? When I made this thing, it was accompanied by a 33-page essay called The Blue Paper. It's 33 pages. Don't worry, it's double spaced and there's lots of pictures, okay? But this essay was very much about predicting what tokenized art could be in the future, right? Like it even talked about what would happen if people tried to fractionalize these supposedly indivisible tokens. All right. And so it was simultaneously predicting what tokenized art could be in the future, and it was looking back to art history to find a precedent to say this stuff seems wild, but it is an evolution of ideas that we have been working through for decades, right? And so I think that the reason why people are connecting to the project right now is because, yes, it came out in 2017, and that itself has merit, but I think that it is a project, people feel so passionately about this culture, about this crypto culture. And this is a project that really, on one hand, a little bit anticipated it, but also placed it in a historical context and provided a way for it to be understood in a way that wasn't just sort of dollars and cents marketplace, but a way that it could be understood really in the context of art history.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this explanation. I believe that after learning about this, and it took me honestly about 2 weeks to really digest what you had done, because the first few times I heard about it, I just didn't it didn't click. It didn't make sense. And so sometimes when that happens, usually my knee-jerk reaction is to just disassociate and say it's not for me. But in this particular case, I just kind of kept pushing myself to learn more. And I eventually capitulated here. And I just said, you know what? I feel like there's something that might be here. So I got one. And then I realized that there's pretty much none of these, and that people are starting to really catch on to this project. I don't know whether it's because of the historic nature of it. I don't know whether it's because of the concept, but I do realize that right now we're in a little bit of a rush to sort of front run what will be historic. And the fact that you wrote a 30-something page essay explaining the thought process behind this piece shows, in my opinion, an absolute ton of foresight and thought, and that to categorize this as low effort, I think would be extremely wrong. And I think it's extremely short-sighted because I think it's actually high effort. And I think whereas The Rock is the most ultimate low effort, right? There's nothing lower effort than The Rock, therefore giving it extreme value in a weird way. But then you look at things that are extremely high effort, like art blocks, fidenzas, these types of really interesting and captivating pieces of art, which people are genuinely in love with and will probably end up in museums shortly. And I think that there's an argument, at least, that this would be a part of it. Anyway, guys, I'm an owner of this. I'm biased. I think that this is a cool project, but I also thought that this was conceptually certainly something that needed to be shown on air. I haven't heard anyone talking about this kind of stuff. Again, I'm new to this world. I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just here trying to learn with you guys and share information. And if you guys learned something from what Mitchell just explained, then please smash that like button. It's the easiest way to show appreciation, because this has truly been insightful. And you're talking to someone who wrote 30-page essays on NFT art in 2017. I mean, that alone deserves its own recognition. So thank you so much for sharing, man. I guess shifting gears a little, what's going on with you now? I know you just did an art blocks. You did an art block series. What do you think is going on here in 2021? Shifting away from your experimental work here, what is going on right now in the NFT market? How do you see things as a leading or a pioneering artist in the space?
Well, Boy, I let me tell you, market analysis is not really my forte, but I think it's an incredibly exciting time, and I think that it's really difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff right now, because obviously there is it's such a bull market right now, so collectors are jumping in and artists are jumping in, and it can be really difficult to differentiate what are the top tier projects, what are the really thoughtful ones, what are the high effort ones, because remember, the effort level doesn't always show on the surface, right? And not everything that is high effort is good. And so we're seeing a lot of people who are essentially trying to find the shorthand for what are the best projects, right? So we're seeing a run on 2017 NFTs because they're 2017. That's easily categorizable, and art blocks, because I mean, honestly, I think that art blocks, just the platform, is not just one of the most important and truly brilliant developments like in NFTs. Like, I believe that it's like a truly significant development in the history of generative art and computer-based art.
I agree.
What Snowfro has built there is brilliant. Like, it is changing the art form. That's not changing back. That's for real, right? And so again, my opinion, and he'll probably be mad at me for piling onto the hype, because he shies away from it. But I do believe it, and so the art block run that we're seeing is people just wanting to be a part of that, and the fact that they did a really good job getting great artists to participate in that platform. Your guess is as good as mine in terms of how the marketplace will like how it's all going to shake out. I know there are projects that I believe in. I think we all just have to be cautious. Not all on-chain artworks are made similar. That's another category that people are looking just looking to check out that category. Not all generative works are created equal. I think that a really smart thing to do would be look at, and I don't want to say look at the history of the artist, because one of the best things about this space is that we're creating a lot of opportunities for artists who haven't had opportunities before. So just because someone doesn't have a long exhibition history before doesn't mean they're not going to be around in 10 years. But hopefully you can tell by interacting with them which ones really are going to be around for 10 years. Who's going to continue doing this even if there is, even if there is a bear market, right? And try to get a sense for that. The other thing that I can say,
I think it's like one of those things where you need to look for extremes. And I think that when you find, at least the way I'm perceiving this right now, and guys, remember, I am super new to art with a capital A. So that's one of the things, actually, sorry, I apologize. I'm feeding back on your mic a little bit. But so one of the things is that the extremes, the dualities, are what makes this so interesting. CryptoPunks expresses in many ways a duality of extreme value and extreme lack of value. The rocks express duality in extreme value, extreme scarcity, and complete lack of value, worthlessness. And this, I feel like, in some ways, has a massive, staggering, eye-watering duality in amazingly high value and literally nothingness, the lack of thing. So as far as conceptual NFTs, for some reason, this one hit home to me. I could be completely wrong. Who knows? I'm either extremely overexposed and the dumbest guy ever, or I'm in genius. And again, a duality, an extreme duality, right? And so I'm just along for the ride, but I can't help but enjoy this. I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. That's sort of how I appreciate your work has inspired me to think a little more deeply about the space. I appreciate you taking your time. Any final words for the audience before we move into our next segment here?
I just wanted to thank you for having me on, and to the audience, I would just say, if people are interested in these ideas, right, and they want to engage with them, read the essay, read the blue paper, because it costs you nothing. It's free. It's on GitHub. And I am genuinely proud of the ideas that it presents in terms of how we can think about NFTs in the context of art history. And I think that it helps provide people with tools for appreciating this and identifying themes that have existed for over 100 years and that we're just really going to be able to explore right now.
Well, thank you so much, Mitchell. I appreciate those words. And again, thank you so much for coming on. I've learned a lot. I've grown a lot. And let's see where this journey takes us. We hope to have you back very soon. Thank you. Well, there you have it. An amazing artist, pioneering artist, sharing what he knows about the space. Again, I want to reiterate a few things, whether or not this is the ultimate realization of high art here, or whether or not this is going to go down as one of the massive signs of the wild 2021 NFT bubble. History will let us know in the future. We'll be able to see that years ahead. But for now, it's very interesting. It's a really interesting psychological exercise to try to front run this and understand what might be the things that last through this mania. We know that there's going to be things that gain value and lose an amazing amount of value. That's for sure. So as we talk about things that we should keep in mind, Gary V has a nice tweet here. I wanted to show it. I'm going to make it a little bigger here. And the reason why I think it's so important is, well, we're bullish on the macro and we're bearish on the micro. And this is because the supply side with NFTs has gone so parabolic that there is inevitably going to be a massive meltdown here. There is going to be a fall from grace where a lot of assets rapidly lose value. So the question is, knowing that we're in 2017 ICO bubble-like territory, obviously, we got Chainlink out of 2017. We got Luna out of 2017. We got, I guess, not really Ethereum, but we got Cardano out of 2017. We got so many big projects that are massively impactful out of 2017. But there was still a massive meltdown. So understanding what's going to be the Lunas, what's going to be the Chainlinks, what's going to be the Cardanos of this requires, I think, thinking on a different level. And so that's why I'm just trying to present as many viewpoints as I can. And this particular experiment of what Mitchell has done here with this non-existent art that is an ode to Yves Klein strikes me as a unique duality that checks literally every box that was outlined here in Arthur Hayes' Rock, Paper, Scissors, Go. So this is just something that I'm keeping in mind, frameworks, non-emotional frameworks, non-subjective frameworks that I can use to try to check my biases and my assumptions. That's my attempt to really get ahead of this. Because if you can get ahead of this, what we're seeing is people are buying things for a few $100 and selling them for millions of dollars. This isn't an over-exaggeration. People are literally becoming overnight millionaires starting with a few bucks. Not everybody. A lot of people are losing money still because they don't know what to do. But I believe that if you're able to run through this checkbox and this checkbox effectively, these different criteria, you very well might put yourself in position. But that it's important to remember that there will be a crash and that there will be a lot of people holding the bag on NFTs that are valueless. And so you have to be careful because everything in this space could come crumbling down. Nonetheless, that duality of so much value and so little value, of so much upside and so much downside, these are the dualities that shape the NFT moment we're in. And it's pretty incredible. It's a pretty incredible moment we're in. Just remember, the ICO phase resulted in massive value creation and enormous outsized winner, despite the majority of projects failing. The majority of projects failing. So just remember, the majority of projects will fail. And so as we talk about, where is it? I think the project of the day or the week was on one. If you guys aren't checking out this site, WGMI.io, it's a good way to track sort of day-to-day floor prices on NFTs, WGMI.io. Highly, highly recommend that. And as you can see, there's been a little bit of a leveling off here. Some of these projects have had just astronomical price rises, and they're down a little bit on the day, which is to be expected because yesterday we got some of the most incredible price rises on Fidenza's went up to 160 ETH floor. That was literally, I think, at about 100 the day before. So it's only right that it levels off a bit. It's only, it's normal for things to pull back a little bit. But understand, we're seeing top signals left and right. We're seeing CNBC cover the rocks. We're seeing Arthur Hayes. We're seeing Justin Sun. We're seeing Zero Hedge. We're seeing so much coverage of this NFT mania. It feels like the top must be in. So understanding that At the same time, we probably haven't nearly topped because there's only like a 200,000 NFT enabled wallets, and there's literally hundreds, billions of people in the world. Obviously, the NFT market has a long ways to go, but in the short term, there will be a collapse, and understanding how to allocate, I think, or trying to front run the collapse is one of the biggest things I can sort of impress upon you. Now, that said, I want to go back to this because it is the absolute summary of how I feel. Where is it? I've never felt so underexposed and overexposed at the same time. Again, just the duality, the beautiful duality that we live in today. Now, I did want to shine a light on a new collection. Everyone wants new collections. Again, I don't know if these are going to be valuable. They could be completely valueless. This is one that I started collecting the other day, and since it started to kind of almost run away from me, this is a new art blocks collection called Phases, and it's actually like these pretty long images that are sequenced, and they grow and they change, really colorful. And I don't know, this got sent to me by someone I trust, the person who actually got me into Fidenzas. It's a new art blocks collection. And I just, something happens when you look at something for a while. And the thing about Phases is you actually have to sit and look at them for like 45 seconds each. So you can't just sort of scroll down a list like you could with CryptoPunks. You can't just kind of quickly look for one that you think is cool. You have to sit and watch these for like a long time. And after I'd watched several of these, I started to really like them. Like something about them aesthetically, I don't know, just a feeling, right? And so I started buying them, and then the floor started to run away from me. It was about 1 ETH floor. Now the floor is about 10 ETH. This is over the course of like a day, right? We're seeing 100 or 10x, 1,000% gains in a day, showing again the bubbliness of this and the imminent crash that feels likely. Now that said, this is the head of this guy, Michael, is the contemporary art specialist and co-head of digital at Sotheby's. It's Sotheby's, the auction house, arguably the most esteemed and prestigious auction house for art in the world. And he's saying, check this out. So I don't know, as they would say in NFT land, probably nothing, right? Probably nothing. But anyway, this is my sort of evolution as a collector, is to try to go from this looks cool, I want it, this is going up in value, must be rare, to then having an actual opinion as to the thesis behind the work, the actual meaning behind the work as far as a larger context of the work, and trying to find some kind of real, thesis and logic-based explanations for my actions. And that's at least giving me some sanity. I might be grasping at straws here, but I've learned a lot. And if you guys have too, please destroy that like button, because we are doing some pretty amazing things. This was the first channel to bring you guys into the NFT space properly. No one else was covering this stuff. We got you guys Bored Ape Yacht Club under an Ethereum. We got you guys some of the biggest gainers of this entire movement. We talked about art blocks before they went parabolic, and we're going to keep getting you into things before they become absolutely astronomical. As that's the goal, at least, is to get you guys things that I think are one step ahead of the herd early. And if that means something to you and you find it of value, then please smash that like button, because we're not stopping. So Elliot, what do I think of stuff? I'm going to get to all the super chats in a minute. But this is just where I wanted to end things. Is there's a lot of noise going on in the crypto space. There is a lot of noise, and you need to have a thesis. You need to understand that we are in a bubble and that things are looking very, very, very wild. But with that in mind, there's still a ton of opportunity. I mean, as you're seeing these numbers, here you go. These numbers are absolutely astronomical. Look at these volumes. Over the last 7 days, you're having 10x on 24-hour volume for CryptoPunks, 300% on 7-day volume. You're having a full doubling of the daily volume here on art blocks. I mean, this is astronomical stuff. And looking at on one force, I mean, look at this. You have 147,000 or whatever % gains here for on one force. And this was kicked off for a variety of reasons. But you saw Logan Paul bought one of these. You saw, 888 Crypto bought one of these. And these look a lot like the Gorillas. They look a lot like anime stuff. Somebody joked, they put up a picture of the Gorillas artwork, that band, the Gorillas from the 90s. And this was the joke is that it looks just the same. But that said, this just struck a chord with people. Now, these are the types of collections, and much respect to On One. I think that it's awesome. I think that the art is super cool. I don't own any, and I don't want this to come across salty. But when I see something that explodes this much in value to a 6 ETH floor with 22,000 ETH traded, it screams too much too fast. So that's where I see when they move too fast, I just stay away, because Pudgy Penguins came down fast, Fluff World came down fast, and it's kind of like an altcoin. When you see it go too parabolic too fast, then you need to ask yourself, is this going to be an historic asset? Is this an asset that I can understand in the whole history of NFTs? This one is going to hold its place for not just months, but years and decades, and that it's not going to be usurped or replaced by something newer and more interesting and more shiny. Well, with regards to the 10K avatar projects, a lot of them are very similar in their value prop, and there was constantly new ones, an incredible amount coming in every day. And I believe that number is only going to grow and grow and grow. I believe we're going to have thousands of new projects a day, if not more. That's going to be the market that we're in the future. I see El Chapo Crypto in here trying to get the Ether Lambos shill. Yeah, who knows? Maybe Ether Lambos are the next pet rocks. I don't know. I'm certainly not going to put my reputation on that. Something to consider. It's almost as dumb as the pet rock. I'll give you that. But maybe it's too high effort. Who knows? The reality is that when I see this stuff, it's just too much too fast for me. So I stay away. That said, not taking anything. The art is super cool. Now, when I think about where it sits in history, this is, not the first, not the second, not even the 100th here in the month of August. So how historic are these? I don't know. How cool are they? They're cool, but it doesn't do enough for me where I want to jump in at the highs. That said, I think it's going to be awesome. I'm sure they're going to have a great project, but looking at the projects that pumped really, really hard and are just sort of straight 10K avatar collectibles, a lot of them come right down. Fluff World, Pudgy Penguins, and the like. So that's sort of the rules of the road that I'm using. Is I'll only be jumping into something that's going up really fast if I think that there's a narrative that this thing is truly historic or blue chip in the way that it's going to be one of the receptacles for store of value going forward. I do think that about art blocks. I do think that about rocks, as dumb as that is. I think that rocks just checks all the boxes. And so, and I do think that, hey, look, there's a chance that we might see that for this project that Mitchell did. So it's a very interesting time to be alive. I'm going to hop into some comments right now. Lots and lots of super chats here. What's your take on Ether Lambos? Thank you, El Chapo. I think it's cool. I don't have any. Maybe I should. And look, it could easily do a rocks because it's just as dumb early and, such a dumb flex. What do I think about Stater Finance? It's a lending platform. Yeah, last time I looked at Stater, it's very cool. It's just DeFi as a community is flat right now. DeFi is just super, super flattened out, and all of the energy in the room has been sucked out by NFTs. I mean, look, NF Tuesday, I think, is the most important content I do in the space right now, at least. Hello from the Doge Pound, puppies in 8 days. Shout out to Doge Pound. I'm supposed to be doing a big Doge Pound buy soon. I'll have to check in with JRNY Crypto. It's an interesting project. Again, the only negative to Doge Pound to me is that there's just so many dog and Doge projects, and that why isn't Doge founder actually doing a Doge meme project? Now, that said, Doge is, in my opinion, the best meme of the crypto space, and it makes total sense that Doge Pound is mooning. I wish I'd gotten in earlier. Very cool project. Yes, on one force. We are talking about it, Rodney. We are talking about it. So let me see. Gosh, did I get all these super chats? I apologize to anyone I missed your super chats. They disappear here. Cool. Crypto art is the one. So yeah, another one is crypto art, crypto arte. I covered that one on a previous broadcast. The point is, when you start investing based on a thesis, you have a potential to hit a much more dramatic home run, and you can even evaluate and find things before they take off. A lot of people have been digging through the historic NFTs and trying to use a series of checkboxes to see whether those criteria are fulfilled. And if they are, that could mean that you have an amazing entry into something that could become viewed as historic. Well, anyway, I think we are getting through most of the comments here. If we have any more comments, drop them in here. Yes, autoglyphs. Oh, audioglyphs are fab. I'll have to check in on audioglyphs. I've definitely familiar with autoglyphs. But I just wanted to say thank you to you all. We're going to be doing much more NFT content. It's become a part of every single broadcast. And we have, in my opinion, some of the most interesting content coming up, featuring artists, featuring different creators and pioneers in the space that are trying to bring this stuff mainstream. And of course, the number one thing that I'm focused on being video games, because of course, the game economy itself is the big selling point. The actual usage and utility, which I think is more important than anything, is very, 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 very high with NFTs and gaming. It's the only place that I think is ready for true mass adoption. And that's why I'm focusing a lot there. With regards to the future content, you're definitely going to want to see this, because things like this digital zones of the immaterial, when I bought it, was just 60 Ethereum, not just 60 Ethereum, but it was 60 Ethereum. And the very next day, the floor price was 140 or something like that. So these things can move extremely fast. And I've never seen such dramatic growth of any asset class ever. That is also a sign that we are in a bubble or potentially a topping phase. So extreme caution here. But as far as actually building a thesis and getting ahead of this market, the people who have done that are literally saying, like, famous traders on CT are saying that because of NFTs, they finally feel like they've made it. They finally feel like they've actually achieved what they wanted to achieve. I know personally, I've been just completely jaw dropped by the actual results I've gotten out of NFTs so far. And I feel like we're just beginning. And that's just even scarier. So if you guys enjoyed this one, if you got value out of it, please smash that like button. We're going to be bringing you guys the absolute best in the industry. We're going to have a giveaway again next week. No giveaway this week, as we're processing that Rev giveaway, where we'll be giving away those Rev cars. We can't wait to get those out to you. Again, we are going to be bringing you the best artists, the best commentators, the best innovators in the entire NFT space. This is NFTV, as we've been joking for so many months now. And we are going to be at the nexus, the core of this NFT culture, and the absolute leader in content in bringing you into this space, because this is a complete paradigm shift that will last for many decades. And it gives me a tremendous amount of joy to do this work. So thank you guys so much for joining me on the ride. Make sure you leave a comment below, as each and every comment is entered when you're on Hardware Wallet. Smash those likes. Remember, you can find me on Twitter at Elio Trades. Go find Mitchell Chan. I'll go ahead and link his socials and his projects in the description below. And I thank you so much for watching. I'll see you very soon on the next episode.